Hey, you all, it's Charlie Merrill with Merrill Performance. Have you ever noticed in your life that when you try to resist things, especially things that are aversive, that they actually tend to get bigger and they sometimes tend to get worse and you get more of that thing? For you, this might relate to thoughts like, your resistance to going to the gym. I just hate going to the gym. I just can't go to the gym. And yet somehow that thought becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. You have more and more guilt. You have more and more resistance. You have more and more angst and anxiety about not going to the gym. It could relate to a behavior. Let's say like drinking alcohol or eating certain foods like chocolate, one of my personal favorites. The more you try to resist those things, the more you try to avoid them, the more you tend to think about them and want them and crave them. And the more those behaviors actually get stronger in your brain. It could also relate to things like anger, where the more we feel anger and that emotion is scary, the more we want to press it down and keep it from bubbling to the surface. And in the process of that, what ends up happening a lot of times is the anger actually gets bigger because we're fighting it. And it tends to show up in our behaviors actually in ways that can actually be destructive in very subtle ways. Different from us expressing it with rage and in an explicit way. You may have other examples of ways in which you resist things and fight against them and then notice that they get bigger for you or they take on more significance in your life suddenly. This is one of my favorite strategies when it comes to helping people with pain, because pain is actually very similar to all these other examples that I gave. And the term that we use when we're talking about this clinically is outcome independence. And outcome independence means we are detaching from the outcome. In the case of pain, the outcome for most people is, I have to get rid of this pain. It's terrible. I can't deal with it. It's scary. It's like completely ruining my life, and I just have to get rid of it. I have to fix it. It's a problem that I have to solve. They throw energy into it. We throw money at it. And yet what that does is it actually tends to reinforce that pain is scary and dangerous. It tends to reinforce that it's something that we have to get away from. And we know that the brain and the nervous system actually respond to that negatively by creating more pain and more symptoms. And so this is really a paradox. And as a strategy, it's difficult because it's like, what the heck do we do about it? The alternative to fighting and trying to fix and problem solve our pain is actually to accept it and welcome it, and then be able to attend to it and explore it and get curious about it without fear. And amazingly, in doing that, we tend to actually reduce the brain's responsiveness, reduce the brain's sensitivity. This is different from feeding it and giving it attention and catastrophizing about it, our negative thoughts and feelings about our symptoms. This is actually welcoming it in a totally opposite way so that we can maybe even learn from it. And we can start to notice that it's moving around and notice that it's behaving in a way that is, inconsistent with structural problems. And of course, as always, when I talk about these things, these ideas, these strategies are really always predicated on the idea that you are confident that you don't have a structural problem, you don't have a tissue damage problem. It's much easier when the pain's been going on a long time and healing is likely to have happened. It's more difficult when symptoms are acute. But I find that if we can start to learn this skill, and it really is a skill, when symptoms start and we can practice on new symptoms, it actually develops our ability to do this regardless of where we are on the pain spectrum. So an example that I can share happened to me on my yoga mat last night. I finished an Ashtanga practice, which is something I don't do very often and I'm not very good at. And in this case, it's been, probably 2 or 3 months since I last did a full practice. It felt fantastic. I got to the end of the practice and I'm lying in Shavasana, which is corpse pose on my back with my arms out to the side, with my eyes closed, relaxing. And the person that's guiding this practice virtually on the computer is using this wonderful metaphor of being on the ocean and trying to let go of your thoughts, thinking of your thoughts like bubbles that are rising to the surface, and then when they get to the surface, the bubbles explode and they evaporate. So this is the idea of trying to let go of your thoughts and feelings as they come up. What I was noticing was this intense pain in my thoracic spine, in my mid-back. This is the part of our nervous system called the autonomic nervous system, and it lives in the thoracic spine. It's our fight or flight sympathetic system, and it's our rest and digest parasympathetic system. And so I have a lot of pressure on that part of my body because I'm lying on it. And I just finished this intense practice where I put my spine through lots of different positions, forward bending, backward bending, rotation, in all different postures. And so the novelty of this after 3 months to my brain was significant. And my brain reacted with this intense feeling of discomfort and burning and pressure and like this nervy feeling. So I'm lying there trying to detach from my thoughts, trying to let them evaporate. And what I did instead was I actually tuned into that intense sensitivity of my spine. And as I was lying there, I just got curious about it. And I started to go inward and say, wow, that feels so intense. Yeah, where is it? It's right there. Gosh, could I give it a color? Could I give it a texture? What shape is it? How big is it? Is it smooth? Is it shiny? Those are just some basic strategies, but even short of that, just even taking a second to observe what's happening to it. Is it moving around? Is it growing in intensity? Again, without command dependence, the goal is not to get the pain to go away. So we welcome it, we watch it rise and fall, trusting that we're not in danger. In this case, that was relatively easy for me, knowing what I'd just done. And for 5 minutes, I could just be with the sensitivity. And in that time, some thoughts and feelings came and went, but I spent my energy sort of focusing with curiosity and love and kindness towards my body and what I just put it through, and most importantly, without fear. So within 5 minutes, I got off the ground and I felt fantastic. It just didn't take that long for it to go away. And of course, I've developed this skill over the course of time, but it's so opposite, that reaction is so opposite to how most of us react when we start to have symptoms. And most of the time, our pain in our body, our symptoms, are not a sign of tissue damage. And this is not something that most people are told or taught, and we're especially not raised to believe that. So in the absence of any clear soft tissue damage, injury problem, even after a hard workout, the chances of some significant injury are relatively low. In the absence of any real obvious soft tissue damage problem, I want to encourage you to work on this skill of doing the opposite of what your initial reaction is. Take a second to notice the symptoms, welcome them. You can even thank them, observe them, get curious about them, explore them. What are they doing? How are they behaving? And maybe even learning something from the symptoms. Is there a helpful message there? Is the message that my workout was too hard, too aggressive, too much too soon? Maybe. Is the message that I had a really stressful day at work, or that I have a lot of stress in my family life, or that my kids are struggling with online school? Is the message that something's coming up for me around a time marker? Is there some anniversary? Is there some massive change in my life that's going on right now that might explain why this discomfort is coming on now as opposed to yesterday or last week or the day before? And if we can tune into it, potentially learn from it, but most importantly, just not attach to it, not push it away, not act out of resistance and need to fix and with fear. If we can welcome it, and the one metaphor I like is just to lay down and let it wash over us, kind of like I did in my yoga practice at the end of my practice last night. If we can let that happen, let down our resistance, the nervous system calms and the pain tends to go away. So I hope you can practice this both with new symptoms and hopefully with old symptoms. Ask me questions as always. Please take a second to click the notification bell so you don't miss a video. Take a second to subscribe, of course. Share with a friend that might need to hear this. And I will look forward to seeing you next time. Peace.